Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we try to tear through the sources so you don't have to. Today, we're taking a look back, a really fascinating look at a film that tried to, well, smash together two very different genres. We're talking high-stakes international espionage and romantic comedy. It led to, let's say, predictably chaotic results. The film is the 2012 action comedy This Means War. Okay, so our mission today, we want to quickly unpack the film's truly wild premise. We'll track its divided critical reception and sort of dive into the context around its, well, pretty unique director. We want to give you those crucial nuggets of insight, help you understand why this specific piece of, cinematic history was made, and maybe whether for a certain kind of movie night it actually worked.
Right. And for this, we're mainly drawing on a pretty sharp film review by John McArthur over at Moviescramble. And the hook, like you said, it's undeniably ridiculous. It really is. You've got these two, highly trained CIA spies. They're best friends. Then they find out they're dating the same woman. And their solution isn't, a quiet chat over a pint. Oh, no. It's to immediately weaponize their elite, high-stakes CIA resources. We're talking everything they're paid to use to protect the country, but used against each other in this ridiculously elaborate high-tech love triangle. That sheer audacity, that's really the core concept, isn't it?
It is. And that concept, as fun as it might sound on paper, it came with instant baggage. Primarily baggage attached to the man in the director's chair, McGann. Just seeing directed by McGann on a poster, well, it instantly polarized people deeply. This wasn't just like normal director baggage. This was a whole reputation that the film had to climb over.
Oh, it absolutely was, yeah. For anyone paying attention to movies back then, that name signals spectacle, right? Rapid editing. And often maybe a feeling that substance gets sacrificed for style. The review we're looking at points directly to his directorial history as the source of that sort of ingrained negative reaction.
Yeah.
We're talking about films that drew pretty sharp criticism from, well, most quarters, things like Charlie's Angels and its sequel Full Throttle. But the real kicker, the thing that created the biggest hurdle for This Means War, was his previous big swing, his venture into high-stakes franchise filmmaking, Terminator Salvation.
Terminator Salvation. Yeah, the reaction to that one wasn't just, oh, the box office was bad. It felt personal for a lot of sci-fi fans, like a betrayal.
It was treated almost like a cinematic crime, wasn't it? The review explicitly notes that Salvation got accused of effectively ruining the franchise, described, without holding back, as the poorest entry in the entire series. And yeah, that includes Terminator 3, which says a lot. So this created this massive, maybe unfair hurdle for McGann. Think about it. Moving from basically committing sci-fi heresy, in some eyes, to directing a light, kind of fluffy action comedy. It meant that for a big chunk of the audience, the director's name alone was enough. Enough to make up their minds before they even saw a trailer.
Okay, let's unpack this then. Does that baggage maybe unfairly skew the whole conversation around a film like This Means War? You can't really ruin a romantic comedy in the same way you can supposedly ruin a decades-old sci-fi legacy, right?
Yeah.
So how did McGann's spectacle-heavy, high-octane style, the very thing that failed critically in the Terminator universe, how did that translate when the stakes were just, a single woman choosing a date?
Well, that's the interesting pivot, isn't it? In the Terminator world, people wanted gritty realism, consequences, high stakes. In This Means War, they get spectacle just for the fun of it. And the low stakes, weirdly, actually allow that style to work better, to kind of thrive even. But the film has to start big, right, to justify these guys' crazy skills.
And it really does start big. The opening is described as a spectacular action sequence. Bang! It immediately introduces our two leads, FDR, that's Chris Pine, and Tuck, played by Tom Hardy. CIA operatives. One American, one British. Best friends, inseparable. They're on a mission. Neutralize the bad guys, secure the glowing briefcase. Standard stuff. They manage it with huge explosions, lots of gunfire, but always, always with time for a quick, charming quip. It sets the tone right away. These guys are hyper-competent, maybe a bit reckless, and definitely charismatic.
Exactly. They're great at their jobs, just not so great at their personal lives. They've hit that point, that level of elite skill, where they realize the only thing missing is, well, a stable romantic relationship. So in a very modern move, FDR decides to try an internet matchup site to find love.
And he basically hits the jackpot first try. His date is Lauren, played by Reese Witherspoon. And she's exactly what that kind of modern rom-com heroine needs to be, right? She's sharp, intelligent, witty, beautiful, checks all the boxes.
Yeah.
But the universe, or maybe just the screenwriter, had other plans brewing.
Right on cue. Yep. Shortly after FDR's really successful first date, Lauren, completely unaware there's any connection, bumps into Tuck, literally crosses paths with him, and Tuck, equally clueless that she's already dating his best mate, is totally smitten. He chats her up, makes a date, and boom, the premise is locked in. The dominoes start to fall.
So, okay, once the two agents figure out they're dating the same woman, and this is critical, Lauren is still totally in the dark that these two guys even know each other, let alone are best friends. They make a pact, like gentlemen. A polite agreement to just let Lauren choose who she wants, naturally.
And that gentleman's agreement lasts. What? 3 seconds, give or take. I mean, these are secret agents, right? Their lives revolve around intelligence gathering, exploitation, and symmetrical warfare. So fairness, out the window, immediately. The real fun of the movie, the core engine, is watching that immediate escalation. They dedicate their multi-million-dollar classified resources, every surveillance technique, every dirty trick in the CIA playbook to relentlessly monitor and sabotage the other guy's chances. We're talking digital warfare, psych ops, physical obstructions, all just to secure a second date. It's nuts.
Yeah, that shift from, protecting national security to totally trivial personal gain.
Yeah.
That's the main joke, isn't it? Okay, moving away from the plot just a bit to the actual experience of watching it, the reviewer classified this film in a really specific way. What did they say about the film's pace? And maybe its intellectual demands? Because this doesn't sound like a movie that wants you thinking too hard.
Oh, definitely not. No, the source material is very clear on this. It says this is a film that will not tax your brain trying to understand it, flat out. The plot's straightforward. And importantly, every major plot beat, every development, it's well signposted beforehand.
No.
You basically know exactly what's coming. The film doesn't try to hide it. It kind of leans into that predictability.
But hang on, if it's that straightforward, how does it stop itself from just being boring or seeming lazy? The reviewer called it very well-made nonsense. Okay, nonsense I get. But if it's genuinely well-made, doesn't that kind of elevate it? Why use that dismissive term, nonsense?
Yeah, it's a good point. I think the nonsense part refers purely to the ridiculousness of the premise itself. The idea that actual CIA operatives would risk careers and national security over a dating competition, that's the nonsense. But the well-made part, that speaks directly to McGah's technical skill, his proficiency, which, despite his reputation from Terminator, is actually hard to deny. He knows how to make a slick movie. The review notes that, under the right circumstance, this is the perfect movie to just spend a couple of hours with. The efficiency, the sheer visual polish, it stops at feeling cheap or lazy, even if the core idea is fundamentally silly.
Right. And here's where it gets really interesting for me, talking about the action. McGah's signature. He is first and foremost an action director. That's his thing. So did his love for spectacle, the thing that got him into trouble before, did it actually work for this film's intended style?
It absolutely did, yeah. The action scenes are consistently described as impressive. That's kind of the baseline expectation for McGah, right? Visually, the film looks expensive, it looks kinetic, and the editing, particularly during the action sequences, is described as frenetic. Now, that's usually a danger sign, isn't it? Too much quick cutting can just ruin things, make it hard to follow. But the source notes something crucial here. The editing, even though it's fast, still lets the viewer follow what's actually going on.
Ah, okay. So it keeps that modern, rapid-fire action movie style, but without sacrificing coherence. That's a tricky balance to strike.
It really is. McGarrett clearly knows how to stage a set piece that sells the action, makes it look cool, and the editing supports the speed without just turning the screen into, visual mush. And crucially, the pacing is dictated by this style, too. The big action set pieces, they're timed perfectly, they pop up and inject some energy right when the film seems like it might be getting a bit bogged down in the standard rom-com stuff. So the action justifies the high-tech spy premise, and the comedy gives you a break from the explosions. It works together.
Okay, let's talk actors then, because they're the ones holding this well-made nonsense together, presumably. Chris Pine and Tom Hardy, usually known more for action, maybe intense dramatic roles sometimes. What was the verdict from the review on the Pine-Hardy dynamic? How did they mesh?
The interplay between Pine and Hardy gets highlighted as genuinely enjoyable and, importantly, rarely gets tiresome. They really sell that best friend chemistry, even when they're actively trying to ruin each other's lives, which is key. But the real surprise performance noted in the source material, that's Tom Hardy.
Wait, Tom Hardy. The intense guy. The method actor known for, transforming himself for Bane or Charles Bronson. He's singled out for his comic timing.
Yeah.
That feels like the biggest takeaway right there. How did that come across?
It's counterintuitive, isn't it? Completely. Right. But the review specifically highlights that Hardy is actually quite watchable in the comedic segments. It suggests he has this natural kind of dry comic timing that maybe viewers who are used to his more serious stuff hadn't really seen before. And the contrast, right, between his established serious persona and this lighthearted competitive spy he plays here, it actually boosts the humor.
Yeah, he's playing against type. Whereas Chris Pine, with that established Captain Kirk swagger, he's kind of leaning into his charismatic comfort zone.
Precisely, yeah. And Reese Witherspoon, she gets to navigate all this chaos while having her own comedic backup. Lauren has her best friend and co-editor, who's played by Chelsea Handler. And the review actually singles out Handler's role as the funniest role in the film. Hands down, her character's described as coarse and vulgar, just totally blunt. She provides that necessary, grounded, comedic relief that stands outside the whole elaborate spy thing. She's basically the voice of the audience, reacting to Lauren's completely insane dating life with profane realism.
Okay, so let's try and consolidate the critical takeaway here. It sounds like this film is definitely polarizing, yeah. But the split isn't just about, is it a good movie or a bad movie? It seems more about managing expectations.
That's spot on. That's exactly it. The final verdict seems to be that the film will absolutely split viewers. It depends on how you feel about romantic comedies generally, and maybe even more so how you already felt about the director's previous work, your view on McGaugh. But the reviewer, who explicitly said they weren't a huge fan of McGaugh's earlier stuff, ultimately found that they enjoyed this for what it is. It's like they gave McGaugh a pass here purely because the stakes were low, the premise was silly, and the execution was technically solid. That focus on spectacle, which arguably hurt Terminator, actually kind of enhanced the absurdity here, made it work.
So the final assessment is more pragmatic acceptance
Mm.
rather than, glowing praise.
Absolutely. The consensus stays pretty grounded. Look, it's not going to win any awards. Nobody's going to be calling it a high piece of art years from now, let's be real. But the reviewer ultimately recommends it as just a pretty good way to spend some time. It delivers exactly what it promises on the tin. Nothing more, nothing less. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, what this film kind of represents is that phenomenon where sometimes critical reviews just take a backseat, especially in this kind of hybrid genre. It's about pure, uncomplicated enjoyment. The source material even mentioned a fan specifically noting their madman love for Tom Hardy as a huge reason they enjoyed it. And maybe for the audience this movie is actually aimed at, sometimes that's all you need. Just a well-produced piece of lighthearted nonsense, starring charismatic actors you like watching. And that can overcome whatever baggage the director brings from, say, a failed sci-fi franchise attempt.
Right, which releases to the core question, maybe especially for you, the listener, thinking about this stuff. You have this high-level, sophisticated technology, right? Surveillance drones, comms, intercepts, government-level resources. And it's all deployed not to fight terrorism, but to track romantic rivals, to win a date. So how does this deliberate blending, taking the high-stakes action genre and mashing it with these really simple, trivial romantic comedy tropes, how does that fundamentally define what we even consider guilty pleasure viewing in this modern era? Does that absurd clash, that juxtaposition, actually make the silliness more palatable, more fun even, something to maybe mull over the next time you decide to spend a couple of hours watching some well-made nonsense?